What's up, y'all? It's Truth Tiger, and we don't conform, and it drives them crazy. That's what we're going to talk about today. We don't conform, and it drives them crazy. And the thing about conformity is, like, people don't really use their free will in the way that they should. People do not have a heart of free will, and that leads to them not having a free thinking mind. And when it comes to God, God gave us free will. That's the way of God. That's how God does things. God wants us to choose Him and to choose to do the right thing and to choose to love others with our own free will. Now, Satan, on the other hand, does not want you to have free will. Satan wants everything controlled. Controlled like marionette puppets on a string. That's how Satan wants it. That's how the devil wants it. That's his way of doing it. And that's the way of the Matrix. And most people sacrifice their free will. They take their free will and they throw it in the trash. Or they were so manipulated and gaslit by the system that they did not even know that they had free will to begin with. And I think that's what's happening with most people. They don't even really know that they have free will to begin with, because the system and the Matrix tries to take that away from you. The Matrix is doing everything it can to try to make it so you don't have free will. So you follow along, you don't think for yourself, you just follow that march of society, and you follow all these societal institutions and, whatever, government, religion, education system, medical system, whatever. There's a lot of them, but you follow those institutions and you believe in those institutions, and whatever those institutions tells you, you believe is true. And so people's scope of knowledge is like really, really limited, and they don't even know it because they're just believing whatever these institutions tell them, and they're letting their mind be limited. But the thing is it's like we all have chains around us, but we actually hold the key to unlock those chains off of us. There are some societal chains that are on us that we cannot take off. Like, there are some things that we cannot escape or get away from, you got to pay your taxes, you got to whatever, you know what I mean? Like, there's certain things you got to do, but for the most part, we have the keys to those chains. And we can choose whether to carry these chains around with us. And most people choose to carry these chains of society like it's some kind of badge of honor, and they're trying to have as many chains of society put on them as possible. And a lot of people are acting like they cannot get these chains off of them also. People are doing that. I can't get it off me, when it's like, hey, you have the key and you can unlock that key and you can take these chains of society off of you. And you can start to think different, and you can start to not be tripped out by all of it, and you can start to live life your own way, think your own way, go about, have your own goals and objectives, and not be so caught up on the societal it's just a circle they're going around in constantly. It's just a circle of work to make more money, and you eat and you sleep, and it's just a constant cycle, and there's no real purpose or meaning. There's no mission, there's no quest, there's no goal, there's no real anything to it, it's just like you stay down here, and with us, it's like we want to be up here, we want to grow out of this and grow into something bigger, we do. And part of that is not conforming, part of that is thinking for ourselves, part of that is using our free will. And the thing is they hate our free will, and they hate the fact that we use and we exercise our free will. They hate the fact that we have taken the chains off of us and that we use the key that we had this whole time. We took the lock off, we took the chains off, and now we're able to walk free. You know, the Matrix is a lot like, you ever heard the story of the elephant that's chained up by a very small chain around its foot? And the elephant could very easily break the small chain, but the elephant was chained up by that small chain since it was a baby elephant, and when it was a baby, it could not break the chain, so now it just believes that it cannot remove the chain. It's the same kind of idea, that we can break that chain pretty easily. We can just boom like the elephant and break it. But a lot of people are so mentally conditioned, they don't believe they can break the chain, and they're so like they don't even try, you know? They don't even try, and they're mentally so just beaten down. And I think for us, we break the chain, we get our mind back, and there's a certain crowd bucket kind of jealousy of like, hey, like they broke their chain, how dare they? They should be back here chained up with us. How dare they break out of this prison? He needs to be back here in prison with us, you know? We got to drag him back, you know? And people have that mindset. And then also, like, people don't want to do the work involved with thinking for yourself because it's risky. It's just like it's not what people are comfortable doing. It may cause you to not fit into society. And people just, they really do not want to think for themselves. They want to stay safe. They don't want to take any risks. And they also just, it's a challenge to think for yourself. It's a challenge to come up with your own stuff and come up with your own mentality for life. And they don't want to do that. They want to be programmed. They like the programming. Because the thing about the programming is you can kind of go into like a autopilot robot mode. And that's like, I would say like probably 90% of most people's waking consciousness is autopilot robot mode. I'm starting to figure this stuff out, and I realize that even a good amount of my own consciousness is robot autopilot mode, and I'm breaking that apart, you know, no more of that. But most people, I mean, not even 90% of the time, most people want to be in robot autopilot mode 100% of the time, where everything is just programmatic routines, and wake up, brush my teeth, okay, go here, go there, and everything is just they're following societal programming, procedural programming, and just, you know, and it gives them a way of like viewing the world, and it shapes their worldview, and it shapes their entire perspective and their entire way of seeing things. And like having that change is going to be very jarring for them, and it's going to force them to see everything in its own unique way, and it's going to force them to like connect. It's going to force them to like see people authentically and see situations authentically. And they don't want to do that. Like, I literally talked to a guy, this was a long time ago, but I remember he comes up to me, he's like, so are you a nerd? Are you a jock? What are you? I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm me. What do you mean, what am I? I'm not a this or a that. I'm me. But like a lot of people, they're trying to be a this or a that. They're trying to put themselves into a box. And they take pride in that box. They love the box. The box gives them their identity, you know, their identity wholly and completely. You know, it's like, I got this Seahawks hat on. I like the Seahawks, whatever. But if I like got my whole identity from that and like from football, and if you took that away from me, I was like, I don't even know who I am anymore, you know, like, it's just some little thing I do. It's nostalgia. It's something I grew up with, whatever. I'm an American. It's what we do here. But it's like, if I didn't have that, I would still 100% be me completely. It would not really affect me at all, you know. But for a lot of people, it's not like that. And you know, they're wearing different kind of hats. It's not necessarily just a hat of like, you know, sports or whatever, but most people, their hat is like politics, or their hat is like religion, or their hat is like social status, you know, or their hat is like being a victim, or their hat is like taking advantage of other people, whatever. I mean, people wear all these hats on their head, but like they very cling on to that hat. They're very like, I wear this. They're like you can't, you know, I need this. Without this, I'm nothing, you know, and that's kind of how people are, you know. and I'm getting my way out of it and making my way out of it, and it's just like, yeah, 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 but like people don't have a good sense of their own identity, and they are really seeking identity in external things, hardcore. They want these external things to tell them who they are, and their value for themselves comes from, I mean, it's an illusion. It's not their true value, but it's an illusion they give themselves with their ego, comes from these external things, and it's not from anything that they have on the inside. It's not, and it's like that they conform to these outside things. They conform, they get in line, and they do what the outside wants them to do. And they're not like, and when they see us like thinking for ourselves and doing things in our own way and having our own unique view of things, it makes them feel very jealous and threatened, and it just like freaks them out because it's like we're different, And also like they kind of see like what they're missing, and they kind of realize like how limited their mind is, and they realize like how blocked up their heart is, and how they are not even being themselves at all. They're being somebody else. They're being this projection of society rather than even being their own person. And it's what they're doing, And when they realize like, oh man, this person's heart is free and their mind is free and I'm not, and they're like, they don't like it. They also don't like, the Matrix gives them ways to classify people. The Matrix has a lot of boxes, and you can put people in boxes, and the Matrix is all about these black and white boxes. You're this or you're that. You're the you're us or you're them. Whatever. You think about politics and all this stuff, it's like you're on one side or the other side, essentially, is how the Matrix is set up. And when you're in the Matrix, they can very easily classify you. They can say, oh, he's this. And they get like, I guess maybe a weird sense of comfort from it. But when they see us and it's like they can't put us in any box, it freaks them out. And it causes like their mind to like mess up. It's kind of like you have a robot and the robot's like does not compute, because it's like, you're giving the robot something it's not programmed to deal with. You're giving the computer something it's not programmed to deal with. It just like glitches out and shuts down. The same thing is happening in their mind where they can't put us in a box. They can't define us. We don't fit in any of their boxes. And it freaks them out because they're like, he's kind of goes in this box, but he kind of goes in this one, but we don't know where to put him. I don't know what to do, And it's something you should be careful with too. It can sometimes cause you to miss out on opportunities and stuff like that because they're like, well, I don't know where he fits, don't know where to put him, so I guess whatever, not deal with him, And so you got to be careful of that because sometimes you could have that reaction of being rejected, excluded, whatever, But like, they want to fit us into a box, and that gives them comfort in their mind. And when they cannot fit us into a box, then they cannot define us. Then we're this thing. It's like if you saw some animal in the forest and it's not an animal you've ever heard of or seen before, and you're like, oh my God, I saw the animal, it had the legs of a bear and the face of a wolf and whatever, it was climbing trees and it meowed like a cat, and I was like, this is the animal I've never seen, It's like you'd be very like perplexed, and you'd be very like, you'd be kind of freaked out, It's the same way when they see us. They're like, I've never seen this before. What is this? I can't define him. I can't put her in a box. We can't define them. They get very like, they get very tripped out because they cannot define us, And they people in the Matrix have like a very rigid way they think things should be. They have a very rigid black and white way that they think the world should be, and a very limited, small, rigid black and white way that they think that the world is. And we live in color, we live in color. And, some people say it's shades of gray, but we live in a full spectrum of color, And to them, shades of gray is the best you can get. Really, like to them, if you can see shades of gray, it's like, oh wow, like that guy doesn't just see black and white, he sees shades of gray. He's really smart, and it's like he has perspective. It's like we see color, you know. But when they see all this color and stuff, they're like, no, it's gotta be black and white. It's gotta be whatever, you know. It's just it's just their minds are very narrow, and because they cannot understand us, they decide that it's like we're bad somehow or whatever, you know. And I would say the way to deal with this is just be a decent person. Don't really give them something to hang on to. Don't like play a pretty tight, clever game. Don't give them a reason to hate, and just be like, yeah, I'm different. I don't conform. So what, you know? And they're like, well, it's not a crime to not conform, I guess. Okay, and you know they want you to conform. They want you to get in the box, but you got to really show them that you're not going to do it, and you're not interested in doing it. You don't want to do it, and it's not a way for you, and it's not something you're going to do. And you know, eventually they will try to stop putting you in the box once you really show that. And they also realize like that you're definitely more of like a leader, because to do what they're doing, it's very much like a following state. It's very much like they do what they're told, and they don't question things. They don't question the premise of things, and they don't ask any reasons why. They just do what they're told, like robots. And we don't. We question things. We question the premise of things. Because like they worship like authority for the sake of authority. If someone's like, I'm a doctor in a lab coat, I'm an authority figure, like, authority figure. Wow, authority figure. Look at him. I'm some politician in a suit. Oh, authority figure. Wow, authority figure, you know. They have this whole thing where there's all kinds of different authority figures, but they really are in like awe and fear and amazement and wonderment of these quote unquote authority figures. And for me, it's like, I don't care if you're a quote unquote authority figure or not. Are you intelligent? Are you reasonable? Do you love your fellow? Do you have morals or ethics? What's the content of your character? You know? Is this stuff that you are a quote unquote authority figure over, are you doing a good job at that? Are you fair with what you're doing? You know? I don't care about people who are quote unquote authority figures. It means nothing to me. Whatever, you know? But to them, it's like, it's like something, it's like such a big deal to them. You know? This whole thing of like authority, and like just like following authority and following rules, and not following a rule because that rule is a good rule and that rule makes sense, but following a rule just to follow a rule. You know, they want to follow a rule just to be like, I'm a rule follower. Yeah, you know, and those same people are hypocrites, and those same people, whatever, don't even really follow the rules that they're so prideful about following, and whatever, you know, there's massive hypocrisy with these people too and stuff, and when if they would really look at the way they live their life and society in the Matrix, they realize it makes no sense. But again, they're not really looking at it with that perspective. And the thing also is like, a lot of people who are conformists, they're like super convinced that they're right about their worldview. And they're super convinced that their worldview makes sense and that their worldview is right and logical. But they have not thought it through at all. At all. They have not researched it. They have not thought it through. They have not questioned it. They have not really like shook it around to see if it holds water. They're just like, I have my worldview. I conform to it. I'm right. Everyone else is wrong. Who doesn't believe this? And a lot of these people, they'll get like, they're really like prideful about it. They'll get really angry and whatever, you know, like, and if you actually talk to them about these things and question it and whatever, like, I don't do it with most of them because they're not ready to be taken out of the Matrix, but I'll drop little hints and little breadcrumbs. And you can see, like, if I talk about something that is a alternative to the Matrix, like, people get very people get very freaked out and very weird, and I'll just drop little breadcrumbs sometimes. Like, what do you think about so-and-so? No, I don't believe in that at all. No, the Matrix told me it's different. The Matrix told me that's not true. The Matrix says that's a conspiracy. I'm like, well, what about this evidence I'm presenting? All the evidence you're presenting is a forgery and a fraud or whatever. It's like something like, what? Well, all your sources you give are bad sources. All the evidence you present is invalid evidence. And it's like, I've had these conversations and it's like, all right, like you don't use facts or logic at all. You just use emotion. And the thing about a lot of people also is like, for one, they're in the mentality of like a 3-year-old child. The vast majority of people are, unfortunately. And also like, people are just brainwashed, man. Like I would say like the vast majority of people, even a lot of good people, are brainwashed. And they're not able to think for themselves. They can't do it, because just they're so brainwashed. They're like, well, what the government says is true, what the religion says is true, and they just get brainwashed, and it's just like, they don't really step out of things and like question a premises, They don't really step out of things and question why it is like the way that it is. And I think this is getting worse. I think this is getting like worse and worse. And I think like people are not really willing to like step out and question and be like, hey, like, we have like all this wealth, but there's so much poverty, and there's like soldiers kill each other, and that's how we solve our problems. And like our society is so like has so much fake morality, and people act like they're all these good people, but they're not. And there's so much stuff going on where we could just question it and be like, hey, what's going on here? But I think people have their sphere of the matrix, they have their area of the matrix, they have their box of the matrix, and they receive all their sense of identity from that box that they're in. So if you question that box that they're in, be it religion, politics, whatever, people have all different kind of boxes that they're in, but whatever it is, it's like they get their entire identity from that box. So if you question that box, they freak out because it's like you're saying they're invalid now. And look, like I'm coming out of this myself. I was in the box too in a lot of ways, and I'm still waking up too, but it's just like, man, they get their entire identity from that. So if you question that box, it could be nationality. Sometimes the box could even come down to ethnicity. The box can come down to a lot of different kinds of things. There's even people that will, they're in this box, and if someone's got a 49ers hat on or something, they're like, enemy, like I'm gonna get him. I mean, that's rare, and that usually happens. People are having a few drinks and are with their buddies and are just trying to do something dumb or whatever, but you get my point that like people are in their box, and that box like gives them identity. And if you insult that box, not even insult it, if you just like question it and you're like, hey, like, why do we do all this stuff? Like, why is it this way? Like, how dare you, you can't question this, And that's how they get, they love conformity. Because conformity gives them all of their identity and all of their sense of self-worth. Their sense of self-worth comes from conformity to the man, conformity to the system, conformity to the matrix, conformity to all this like Jezebel, and it's conformity to all this evil. Conformity to Satan is what it is. That's really what it is. It's conformity to the devil. Really. And that conformity gives them their entire sense of identity. And the thing is, God doesn't ask us to, quote unquote, conform to him. God just says, follow me willingly. God says we should use our own free will choice to submit to him. God doesn't want us to not have any sense of identity. God wants us to gain identity from him. I.e., gaining our identity from God means we get to be ourselves, because he made us to be ourselves. And he put a sense of identity inside of us. You know, when Moses saw God in the burning bush, Moses said to God, when the people ask, who have I spoken to? What should I tell them? What should I say your name is? What should I say who you are? And God just says, tell them I am, you know? And God just like, at some point, I am. I'm here. I don't have to like explain myself any further. And it's the same with us. He made us. And because God is, how much more so are we? You know, we just are. And we don't have to like say, oh, I'm this, I'm that. No, we are. We just are because God is. And at the end of the day also, my last point is, when it comes to conformity, a lot of people who do this conformity, it's a way for them to shut off their own ethics and moralities and to say, I'm just following orders, I'm just doing what society expects of me. If you were in my position, you do the same thing or whatever. Everybody does this to get ahead or whatever. People have all kind of different ways they justify it. It's the way the world works. It's how it is. What can you do? People have a lot of different ways they use to justify this and a lot of different turns of phrases they go to. But at the end of the day, it's like they are morally accountable. They are. They're not just following orders. It's not just how everybody does things. It's not just the way the world is. It's not just what you got to do. No. They are morally accountable for the choices that they make. And the more you're able to throw yourself away with conformity, the more you're able to make yourself a number and put yourself in a box and make yourself into an inanimate object, the more you're able to turn yourself into an android or delude yourself that you are an android. Now I'm just a robot and I'm just following the master's programming. He programmed me to do this. I'm doing it. I don't have a choice. See these chains I have on me? I can't do anything about it. You know, and it's like, yeah, you can. You really can. And a lot of times there are certain benefits they get from this, maybe financial benefits, whatever, social status increases, whatever. But there's things where it's like, yeah, you don't have to do this. You can do something different, you know? And that's not going to hold up in front of God. That lie is not going to hold up in front of the truth. That just following orders, that's the way everybody does things, it's how things are, whatever. Nah. When we choose to have free will, we can choose and we can actually take ownership of our choice of right and wrong. We're not going to delude ourselves to say that we're an android who has no choice and we're programmed by the matrix and we're just following. No, we're following our programming. No, we're going to say, no, we have our own choices. You know, and I have made mistakes. I have made bad choices. I have done evil. I have to own that. I have to hand that over to Jesus Christ and say, I screwed up. Please forgive me. And I have to stand on that and say I made those mistakes. But at the same time, I can also say I'm going to choose good. I'm not just going to follow my programming from the system. No, I'm going to choose good and choose to do the right thing as best I can. Consciously, you know? But by people being brought down into a state of unconsciousness, and I say that it's an illusion because you always have consciousness. You always have a choice. You always have free will. You know, they're being gaslit by the system, and they're also gaslighting themselves into believing that they don't have choice. It's like, you do. And another thing also, if you have all this deep existential dread, and you're just like, well, I'm going to be I'm just an android of the system, whatever, I'm just a robot of the system. Now it's like, well, I'm a robot. Robots don't have feelings. They don't have emotions. They don't have existential dread. And now I don't have to feel all those painful feelings anymore. I can just be a cold, dead robot, and I'll just work the way a machine works. Peak delusion. It's not true. It never will be true. And a lot of this is deep in people's hearts. I don't know what's really going on up here either. There's weird stuff too, but it's deep in people's hearts. Deep in their heart, they're like choosing this. And it's like, no, and I will deal with existential dread. I will deal with my own heart, my own emotions. I will carry those. I will choose to do good, choose to do the right things. And I get to live my own life. I get to be my own person. I don't have to be a weird slave of the system. God doesn't put any chains on me. God carries me in the palm of his hand. And also, God is really in charge. Like, for real, for real. He is the master of the universe. He doesn't need to prove anything to himself, or he doesn't need to, I need to be in control. He already is powerful. He doesn't have to do that. In the end of the day, like Jesus said, I will raise these stones up to praise me if no one else does. It's like God doesn't need, God's not like, I need these people to bow down to me. I need to control them, whatever. That's Satan. Satan's the ultimate narcissist, Really, Satan's the ultimate narcissist, sociopath, control freak, psychopath, weirdo. And God is good. And God carries us in the palm of our hand. And God made us all unique. And God made us to be ourselves. And God lets us be ourselves. God does. He allows us to do that. And he does not want us to be forced into all this conformity and all these things in the system. God doesn't. And the thing also, a lot of times this stuff with conformity, the ego kind of likes conformity. People on some level, in their ego, for whatever reason, they want conformity, this thing where we all walk the same, talk the same, dress the same, act the same. People want that, and I don't know, it's people need that to be cohesive as a group. They can't just we're all a little bit different, but we kind of roll together, Most people are not mature enough to do that, They're not. And when I say God lets us be free, it's God makes us free to choose. God makes us free to choose good and evil, You got to choose good. You got to choose to do the right thing. That doesn't mean to have no discipline and just do a bunch of dumb stuff or whatever. But yeah, you get my point. We're authentic people. We're real people. Created by the most real, true, authentic one of them all, Yeah. I'm going to end this one, but thank you all so much for watching. I really, really appreciate you all. God bless, and I'll see you next time.